Hello everyone, welcome to another video of Into the Hive Mind. This episode I'm just going to be going over the last 2 weeks where I got to play in two different majors. First the Bugeater Major in Omaha, Nebraska, as well as this season's first super major, the Atlantic City Open. I took similar lists to both events with one major difference, and I performed pretty well, considering both events were still very much dominated by Drukhari Liquefier spam. I also want to just give a huge shout out to other members on my team who performed exceptionally well these last 2 weekends. Teammate Ben Neal, who was on my video a couple weeks ago, he managed to take Tau all the way to the finals of Bugeater, only losing to Matt Root, and unfortunately he kind of lost that game turn one when Matt Root got to go first. A 5-man witch squad disembarking out of a raider managed to actually only lose 4 models from Ben's giant crisis suit unit, which then left a single witch left who won the roll-off and prevented, the 700-point unit of his army from shooting turn one. If that hadn't happened, I think Ben actually could have gone all the way, and his Tau list is what inspired Siegler to bring basically the same army to the Atlantic City Open, where Siegler performed exceptionally well. So again, big shout out to Ben. Cody Giroux also managed to make it all the way to the semifinals at the same event, losing to Ben Neal, but then this next week he followed that up by going all the way to the top table at the Utah Alliance GT. And finally, Zach Kerstetter brought a mixed Imperium army to the Atlantic City Open and managed to go 5-1. So he took a very respectable 18th place out of 264 players. So just wanted to give a huge shout out to all of my teammates who did super well. Based on all of our events these last 2 weeks, our Denver Mountain Trolls team, I think, is number 6 in ITC after that. So yay team. But anyways, you guys came here to talk about bugs. So let's just go ahead and jump right in and start out with the first list for Bugeater. So for Bugeater, I did bring the Harriden once again. This is probably his final hurrah for me in the tournament scene for a little while, but I gave him Dermic Symbiosis, which gives him that 5+ invulnerable save and doubles the amount of wounds that he has for terms of degrading. The Harriden has been incredible. He just kills so many things that Tyranids would otherwise bounce off of, and I honestly have had so much fun having him in my list. The only issue being Dawn of War deployment, not being able to fit in that is just really a huge downside. But in addition to the Harriden at Bugeater, I brought a Kraken Patrol containing 2 Broodlords, one with Catalyst, one with Onslaught. Catalyst just basically always goes on the Harriden whenever I can. And Onslaught because I'm Kraken and almost all of my guns are Assault, so that allows me to advance and then still fire my weapons without penalty. In the troop department, I then have the 2 units of Devourer Gaunts, so again, they can advance forward with Kraken, advancing 3d6. Sometimes I want to double it to get in range. Throw Onslaught on there so they're still hitting on 4s, double shoot them. It's great. I also had 6 Shockcannon Hive Guard, and they are great for all the same reasons. Every opponent that I told, hey, yeah, I'm bringing Shockcannon Hive Guards, they do not ignore line of sight. They're only 24-inch range. My opponents just kind of scoff at me and say those are bad. And then I pick up like a Plague Burst Crawler turn 1 with them after they run forward, advance, double their advance, throw Onslaught on them, double shoot them. They kill a lot. That Haywire is actually super good in the current meta right now. So, in addition to that, I just have a Lictor for Deploy Scramblers, and then a 4-armed Emperor Patrol. This is the same patrol that I took to the Utah Salt City Major, except instead of being Bladed Cog, I now have 4-armed Emperor, which gives the Warlord trait of D3 extra command points. I took this because I really need those command points. The Harriden eats out a lot of them. But again, same detachment, so I have a unit of 20 Handflamer Acolytes, 5 additional Acolytes just to help with Scramblers, and then 10 Neophytes that start on the board, giving me access to that Uprising generator. It's Vect. give me access to the Vex stratagem turn 1. And then I finally finished that out with the Kelermorph, who is wielding the Oppressor's Bane. And again, if you guys have not looked at this guy, the Kelermorph is an all-star. At Bugeater, I swear he killed over 1,000 points in that weekend. 5 games, 1,000 points killed with a 80-point model. The guy's just incredible, and especially, I think he's just going to get better, especially with the dependency that AdMech has on their characters. Definitely keep an eye out on the Kelermorph. But once again, this list is basically designed around the Harriden, and relying on that Harriden to win me every matchup against Space Marines and Custodes. And then the rest of the list is built to take on Drukhari between just mass Devourer Fire or Handflamers or the Kelermorph to snipe out Drazar and Succubus. If I fight anything else, then I'm kind of in a bit of trouble, but that's really just the state Tyranids are in right now, and you just kind of have to take that gamble. So let's do a brief recap of games at Bugeater. So again, because this is going to be 2 tournaments, my recaps are probably going to be substantially quicker because I don't want this video to go on too long. But I do appreciate all of you guys listening to me. So round 1 at Bugeater, I went up against Spacewolves. This is a pretty typical Spacewolf successor chapter where his 6s to hit explode, which stacks with the Spacewolf super doctrine. So any 6 to hit in the fight phase from turn 3 on actually counts as 3 hits. And he basically went all in on this strategy by taking 3 units of Skyclaws, 3 units of 5 that all have Thunderhammers. So 15 Thunderhammers that basically deep strike in and charge, and then with +1 to hit as his second successor trait, makes it where he's still hitting on 3s with those Thunderhammers, and any 6 to hit counts as 3 hits. Absolutely terrifying. Unfortunately, he's kind of relying on the Chaplain having the prayer for +2 to charge, giving him a 7-inch charge with all of those guys coming out of reserve. And instead of outflanking the Chaplain or deep striking it, because it was a Primaris Chaplain, so I don't think he can deep strike it. And instead of outflanking it, he relied on it starting on the board, which allowed the Kelermorph to just pick it up, and he could not make those 7-inch charges anymore, so he had to make 9-inch charges, and unfortunately he only made 1 of the 3, which was not enough to kill the Harriden, and the Harriden did its job and managed to kill everything. So I very handily won that game, 88-59. Kelermorph, absolutely gold star. I spent 5 CP on the Kelermorph turn 2, showed him up 3 away, and killed his Judicar, which was his Warlord, giving me 10 points for cut off the head. And then I shot a second time and killed the Chaplain, which was a really big turning point in that matchup. So round 2, I went up against Steve Boatwright. I guess he's a well-known player. I have not personally heard of him before this, but he mentioned how he took like 5th at Nova and 9th at LVO in 2019. So I guess really good player. I just had not happened to run into him before. But he was running Mortarion with 8 different Moirax with lightning locks. So basically, absolutely devastating against Drukhari with all of their just ridiculous amounts of strength 6 shooting. And then he had a side detachment of Mortarion, and then another side detachment of Chaos Marines. I forget which Legion it is, but it's the one that can use a CP to auto cast Warp Time on Morty. And that's exactly what he did. Turn 1, he won first turn, double moved Mortarion right into my lines. I was able to screen out where he could not charge the Harriden turn 1. However, he instead just went after the Hive Guard, killed all 6 of them, which I guess was better than losing the Harriden, but those Hive Guard really could have come in handy since he has 8 Moiraxes that the Hive Guard honestly could pick up 2 of in a turn. Unfortunately, that didn't happen since Morty picked him up, and I had a really big decision that I had to make. I either had to ignore Morty and let him just absolutely destroy my back lines, or I could have throw my entire army and hope to kill him in 1 turn. I opted for the latter, and it did not happen. After smites and every single gaunt firing into Morty, I had done a total of 3 wounds to him. So that's 120 Devourer Gaunts and 2 smites. Did a total of 3 wounds. And then the Harriden landed right next to Morty, pumped up the shooting, did the +1 to wound, +1 damage. And I got 7 hits out of my 16 shots. And then I rolled 4 ones to wound, wounding on 2s. So I only did 3 wounds. He made 2 of those 3 on his 4+ invuln. Command pointed the 3rd one, made it. So I did 0 damage with the Harriden's guns. And unfortunately, as I said, I landed right next to him. I'd already committed, so I was kind of forced to charge in just so he wouldn't charge me. And again, did 3 wounds in combat. He saved 2 of them. Command pointed, saved the 3rd one. So I did 0 damage with the Harriden against Mortarion. And that basically lost me the game right there because that enabled him to hit back with Mortarion, do like 18 wounds to the Harriden. And I did nothing on my turn. Morty then falls back, and the other 8 Moiraxes pick up the Harriden, and then in the following turn pick up the rest of my army. So that was really bad for me, really unfortunate that I just completely didn't do anything to Morty when I threw everything at him. Unfortunately, Morty is just really swinging like that. So I ended up losing that game. I think he max pointed, and I only got 34 points. So that was definitely rough, but not much you can do when that happens. And I was really hoping, okay, well, now I'm 1-1. Maybe I can submarine, play some lesser players now, and work my way back up to the top. Unfortunately, that did not happen at all. Instead, my round 3 opponent was none other than Dan Salmons, who is, if you don't know, one of like the top 10 players in the world. And the only reason he was 1-1 is he lost to Matt Root in round 1. So I go up against Dan Salmons, who is playing a mixed list of Admech and Sisters. And unfortunately, his list is just a perfect counter to mine. And he is obviously an amazing player. And he won first turn. So basically, he has 3 different Retributor squads with multi-meltas, which is the perfect counter to the Harriden. Fortunately, I now brought 4-Armed Emperor, so he gets out of his Rhino and fires a whole bunch of meltas at me, using the stratagem to extend their range to 36 inches. And I vect that, so he gets out of the Rhino and then actually still can't shoot me, which is really fun, but unfortunately it was not enough, because then he also just advances forward with the entire Admech portion of his army, including like 18 of the Cerberus Raiders. And those guys are very good at screening out, so kept me in my deployment zone with those, meaning that my turn 1, I basically just killed all the Cerberus Raiders and not much else. And then his turn 2, he just advanced forward and spread out with his entire army. He even brought random 18-point characters, the Gemini, with that he didn't have Celestine, but he had random 1-man Gemini squads to help screen. And it made it where the only time I could bring in my Genestealer Cult is if I spent 2 CP to show up 3 inches away, because there was not room on the entire board for me to show up 9 inches away. And based on that, I just could not bring in my Genestealer Cult, and then the Harriden lived for 2 more turns before the 15 multi-melta Retributors were able to bring it down. Because of that, I couldn't really do anything against his list and lost pretty badly. That one, he max pointed, and I only scored 32 points. So very good game on his part, but that left me 1-2 after 3 rounds. So not feeling super great, but Bugeater did do 4 rounds day 1 and 2 rounds day 2. So after that, being 1-2, I do the final game of the day, and I get paired up against Imperial Knights. He was running House Tyranids, which gives them a 6-up Feel No Pain and a stratagem for 3 CP to stand up at the end of the phase with D3 wounds back after you kill them, which is super good. Unfortunately for him, I'm able to do wounds in basically every phase of the game. So, and also the Harriden is just really, really good at killing knights. He was running 4 big knights, 1 little knight, and I got first turn, and basically the Haywire Hive Guard double shot and put one of the big knights down to like 3 wounds left, and the Harriden put another knight down to 3 wounds left. And then on his turn, he did something like 14 wounds to the Harriden, a decent amount, but nowhere near enough. And then my turn 2 with the Genestealer Cult coming in, and everyone else coming in, I basically had the Kelermorph show up and shoot the 3 wound knight who was a character, so I got to reroll wounds against it with my relic pistol, kill it. It then stood up at the end of the phase, but then I just charged it and killed it again. And I essentially tabled him on turn 2. It was really one-sided, unfortunately for my opponent, but I ended up winning that game 94-17 to finish day 1 2-2. Not a great showing, but I did okay. So then, starting day 2, round 5, I am once again paired against Knights of the Chaos variety this time. He is running 3 big Knights and 5 of the Warglaves. And basically, the unfortunate part of this one is now we are playing Dawn of War. This is the only mission that was Dawn of War, and I basically just kind of gambled. But the Harriden cannot act turn 1 as he does not fit in a Dawn of War deployment. And that is what swung the game around this time, because it meant I only got 1 turn to use the Harriden against the Knights, and 1 turn was not enough. He did 18 wounds to the Harriden turn 1, where it didn't get to do anything, and then the Harriden landed and shot all of his guns into one of his big Knights and killed it, charged another one of his big Knights, put it down to only 6 wounds left. The Knight swung back, killed the Harriden, because this was he had this flat 6 damage weapon, and he managed to do the rest of the wounds to me in combat. Upon which time I exploded and did the final 6 wounds to his big Knight and killed it as well. I love it when Titanics explode and kill other Titanics. It was really fun. And then the Hive Guard actually double shot between 2 turns and picked up his 3rd big Knight. So at the end of turn 2, all 3 of his big Knights were dead, but my Harriden was dead. And so that left it to be 5 Armigers running around, or 5 Warglaves running around against my horde of little guys. And unfortunately, the Warglaves have those sweep attacks, so they get 10 attacks each, and my little guys just couldn't hurt them enough. So I ended up losing that game by 5 points, 78-73. Which was unfortunate, and one of those games that, as shown by the previous matchup, had the Harriden been able to act turn 1, I 100% would have obliterated my opponent, but not being able to act turn 1 really just kind of made it where I lost, and that is definitely the biggest downside of taking the Harriden. So now, after 5 games, I am 2-3, not doing good at all. That's actually the worst I've ever done at a big event. But we do go one more round, round 6, where I go up against Necrons. And this time I get first turn, and the Harriden just wants to make up for his poor showing in the previous game. And against the Necron player, I managed to kill 3 of his quantum shielded vehicles turn 1, which he was just absolutely blown away by. The Harriden picked up 2 of them. The Hive Guard picked up a Ghost Arc. And that put him on such a bad back foot. He was just never able to recover. And I was able to just keep him in a corner. He spent the entire first 2 turns throwing his entire army into the Harriden. He did kill it, so it died turn 2, but it literally took every single bit of power from his entire army for 2 turns, which left the rest of my army entirely unmolested and able to just keep him in a corner and lock him down. So I won round 6, 95-25. So very high scoring, or the winners were very much blowout games, aside from the one game that was the Dawn of War. And my final score in Bugeater was 3-3. So kind of a poor showing for me. I normally do much better than that, but I ended up taking 29th place overall out of, I think, 61, 62 attendees. So I was in the top 50%. So not too bad considering, especially going against Dan Salmons when I was 1-1. That was just really bad luck. in addition to being kind of hosed on Dawn of War. But so that was the end of Bugeater. And then the very next week, I went to the Atlantic City Open. There was only one big change in my list. I did not take the Harriden. I had asked beforehand, and they basically would not tell me how many missions were Dawn of War. They said they didn't want anyone to list tailor towards the missions. So unfortunately, going in blind, not knowing if we were going to be playing 2 or 3 Dawn of War missions with a Harriden who doesn't get to act in them, I just wasn't really willing to make that risk. And I also didn't want to take that giant chunk of resin on an airplane. So instead of the Harriden, I brought Swarmlord with 2 Demicarons. And I just replaced one of the Broodlords with a Swarmlord. And that gave me enough points to also bump my Devourer Gaunt squads up to a 25 and a 30 man instead of 2 20-mans. Other than that, the list was identical. And I did pretty well at ACO. Round 1, I ended up going against Death Guard. He was running a whole bunch of buff characters, a bunch of Terminators, and then 2 Plague Burst Crawlers and 2 of the Volkite Contemptor Dreads. No Mortarian, but lots of buffing characters and Terminators instead, as well as the Blight Drones and all the other fun vehicles that Death Guard can bring. In this game, I did manage to get first turn, which was huge because the Hive Guard double advanced forward, managed to get in range of one of his Plague Burst Crawlers, shoot twice, and kill one of his 2 Plague Burst Crawlers. And then on the other side of the table, I double moved a Demicaron, charged into some Terminators, fought twice to kill them all, and thankfully I did kill them all because that then allowed me to pile into his other Plague Burst Crawler. And because I tagged one and killed the other, that meant that his Plague Burst Crawlers basically didn't do anything that game. And then in addition to that, his Volkite Contemptor Dreads just completely whiffed, doing almost no damage to me. So that allowed me turn 2 to have the Demicarons finish off the Contemptor Dreads and the other Plague Burst Crawler, and Swarmlord go in with the Handflamers to kill his Warlord Demon Prince, who was all super buffed up. And from that point on, he basically just had a bunch of Terminators left who were not OBSEC, and that meant I was able to contest all the objectives, and the game went very handily in my favor there. I don't even think my opponent scored any primary points, unfortunately. So the final score there was 90-18. I just got to go first and really tie everything up and lock down his objectives right from the get-go, which Tyranids are very good at doing. And then round 2, I basically went up against the exact same list. Another Death Guard player who the only difference in the list was instead of 2 Plague Burst Crawlers and 2 Contemptor Dreads, he had 3 Plague Burst Crawlers and 1 Contemptor Dread. Other than that, the list was almost identical, and the game basically went identically. I got first turn and just did the exact same thing, even more effectively this time. I ended up winning 94-14. I'm not going to give you the details because, again, it was the exact same thing happened. I was just basically able to repeat the previous game. So with that, I'm now 2-0 and really high scoring games as well, 90 and 94. So that is putting me at the top, where I then run into the super good players. So I end up playing Jack Harpster from Art of War with his Deathwatch Dreadnought spam list. He did end up playing this list on their Art of War stream a couple weeks ago against Siegler, and unfortunately did not do well against the new AdMech, but that does not mean his list is bad. It is very powerful, tons of shooting. In this game, I did get to go first, so I got to go first all 3 games day 1, which Tyranids definitely need to do. And with that, I charged both Demicarons in turn 1. He was able to screen with all of his Vanguard veterans to make it where I couldn't get to any of his dreads, which is the smart play. So I was unable to kill any dreadnoughts with the Demicarons. I did kill 3 veteran units, though, including a unit of 4 bikes. And that was pretty good. I even got the Feel No Pain on the Demacaron. But then his turn, all 5 dreads just opened up point blank and picked up both Demacarons. Which, I mean, is a big loss, but is survivable. My turn 2, he managed to screen off Swarmlord, and I ended up using the Kelermorph to blow away the screen and double move the Swarmlord through it. Unfortunately, Swarmlord failed Onslaught, and the Broodlord failed Catalyst. So then when I double moved Swarmlord, instead of it being like a 1-inch charge into one of his dreads, it was a 5-inch charge, and I rolled a 4, re-rolled it into a 3, and so Swarmlord failed Onslaught, failed Catalyst, and failed a 5-inch charge, which just left Swarmlord sitting right in front of all 5 of his dreads without Catalyst. And the only other thing was my Acolyte Handflamer Bomb managed to charge one of his dreads, one of his Redemptors, and I put it down to 2 wounds left, but I couldn't quite kill it. And on his turn, he picked up all the Acolytes and Swarmlord and the Hive Guard and the Gaunts, and left me with very little left. So my list did exactly what it had done to the Death Guard, where I denied almost every point to him for the first 2 turns. But by turn 3, I was tabled, and he basically scored every single point turn 3, 4, and 5, giving him a really handy lead. He ended up winning that game 97-57. So I finished day 1 2-1, only losing to a very powerful Art of War player because, Swarmlord. If Swarmlord had been able to make his charge, kill a Dreadnought and the Acolytes, they did have Might from Beyond, but I rolled pretty bad on the wound roll. But if I had picked up both of those dreads, I think I could have won that game. Unfortunately, the dice just weren't quite there, and because of that, I was just obliterated from the return fire. So starting day 2, I am paired up against a triple Lord of Skulls list. This is Iron Warriors, and this is played by Chris. I think he played this exact same list at LVO in 8th edition, and he made it to the top 8, or at least made it into the Shadow Round. He was talking to me about making it into the Shadow Round. I don't know if he actually won or not, but I know he played this exact same list, and unfortunately for him, that list, 9th edition is very different from 8th edition. So he did get first turn, and his firepower was absolutely devastating. We were playing on Necron terrain, which basically has no line of sight blocking at all. So his turn 1, he picks up both Demacarons and all 6 Hive Guard before I even get a turn, which is absolutely brutal and normally would lose me the game right from the get-go. However, he basically kept his 3 Lord of Skulls around his Lord Discordant and his Master of Possession, who were giving them all the buffs. They were giving him the 4+ invulnerable save, and +1 to hit, and 6s to hit explode. So I understand why he was staying there. However, he was very much still playing 8th edition, and because of that, he only scored 30 primary points over the course of the game, and I had enough little stuff sitting on the other objectives that I managed to score 15 points for primary turn 2, 3, and 4. And I was able to get my deploy scramblers, and I did manage to kill 1 of the Lord of Skulls with Swarmlord. So that left me with 10 Titan Hunter, 10 scramblers, and 6 engage, and then 45 primary, compared to his 30 primary. And because of that, I ended up winning the game 81-77, just because, he basically only stood on one objective for the majority of the game. The second objective that he touched was only with 1 Lord of Skulls, and I was just able to take it away from him with Gaunts every single turn. And 9th edition is a very different game. You have to get those primaries, and because he did not, I actually managed to win a game that I definitely should not have won. But that ended up leaving me 3-1 at the end of round 4. So then I end up playing a guy named Mike. Finally, 3.5 majors after I build my list to take on the Drukhari Nemesis, I finally get my first game against them to see how I do. I get first turn, and the answer is I do very well. All I really do turn 1 is double move a Demacaron up and charge a Raider. It was the Raider with Drazar in it, and I did take Cut Off the Head on Drazar. So basically, I just wanted to get him out on foot as soon as possible, so that way the Kelermorph could then pick him up turn 2. And he then did me a favor by charging the Demacaron with Drazar and the Incubi, which is exactly what I was hoping he would do, giving me the opportunity to kill Drazar even turn 1. When he fought with Drazar, he put the Demacaron down to 10 wounds left, so I wasn't even degraded. I then interrupted, fought against Drazar, did 5 wounds that, all do D3 plus 3 damage. Except then he made every single 4-up invuln save, which was very unfortunate and left Drazar alive, made me waste my CP, and then made it where the Demacaron did absolutely nothing. He also rolled a 6 on this strength check against the Dema's special ability, so gave me absolutely nothing there, and then he picks up the Demacaron. Luckily, the Kelermorph came in and did exactly what he was supposed to do. I spent 5 CP, showed up 3 away, shot Drazar twice, and I did manage to pick him up, giving me 10 points for Cut Off the Head. And in addition to that, I basically was able to just continually throw Gaunts on objectives, and this was the really weird mission of 3 Dawn of War deployment, 3 objectives on each player's deployment zone, basically, but it was a hold 2, hold 3. So all I really had to do was throw a Gaunt unit forward every turn to deny one of his objectives. And since I got first turn, exactly what happened to me in Utah, where whoever goes first just kind of wins that mission. And I did get to go first. So all I did was hold him to only 5 primary points every single turn. And meanwhile, I'm getting 10 every turn for myself. And that basically ended up winning me the game. Even though I got tabled on turn 5, I still ended up winning 70 to 55. And List did exactly what it was supposed to do against Dark Eldar. And so that leaves me 4-1, which is about as good as I can hope for at a super major. And then I go into round 6, and I am once again against Drukhari. All the Drukhari players are like 4-1 because the army's broken. And thankfully, I get to try out my list again, and I get to go first again. So I got to go first in 5 of my 6 games, which I think is the only reason I did so well. But this game especially, I double move the Hive Guard forward, or double advance them forward, and double shoot them, popping both the Raider and the Venom that contained my opponent's liquefiers. And I double moved the Demacaron to then charge all of the racks inside with those liquefiers. I took 10 wounds in Overwatch, which definitely hurt, but didn't kill me. And between fighting twice, I managed to pick up every single rack. So I eliminated all of the liquefiers that my opponent had turn 1, which was really big and definitely put me at a pretty big advantage. And then my opponent's strike back, he basically charged the Demacaron with both of his succubi. He had both of the upgraded ones with the flails and the triptych whip, in addition to like 20 witches. And they came in, charged the Demacaron, killed him, but then he exploded and did 3 wounds to both succubi, in addition to, killing a couple of the witches. So that was really big. Because between that and then Drazar and Incubi got out and charged Swarmlord, and Swarmlord has a 3+ invulnerable save, and rolled ridiculously well on his saves. Swarmlord took all of 2 damage. I only failed 1 save against one of the Incubi. I did use a command point against Drazar, but yeah, basically Drazar and the Incubi did nothing to Swarmlord in combat. And I managed to kill Drazar in return, in addition to a couple Incubi by fighting twice. And then on my turn, the Kelermorph came in and put 1 pistol into each succubus, who were down to only 2 wounds each because of the Dema's explosion. picked up both of them. So all of a sudden, my opponent no longer has Liquefiers. Drazar's dead. Half his Incubi are dead. Both his Succubi are dead. And my Handflamer unit came in and picked up all 20 witches before my opponent even had their turn 2. And he was just like, you know what? This is round 6. You've won. And he just called it right there. So he didn't even play his turn 2. And that ended up giving me a win, 90 points to 20 points. And I finished ACO 5-1. Which is, I've never actually gone 5-1 unless you count me playing War Convocation in 7th edition. I actually won a couple majors with that, but with Tyranids, this was my first time going 5-1. I was very excited to do so, especially at a super major. And honestly, Kelermorph and Shockcannon, Hive Guard, and Handflamers, they do great. They really helped me out this whole event. And if you have not put those in your lists, I highly recommend trying it. So I ended up taking 21st out of 264 people. Got a ton of points for the ITC. Was a great time. Loved playing there. If you guys are still watching this, thank you so much for sticking around. The next event that we're playing in is actually the team event in Vegas in September. So I don't really have anything going on until then. And our team is actually the Denver Mountain Trolls. I think because we all did super well in this last 2 weeks, I think our team is actually ranked number 6 in ITC right now. So we're taking the Vegas event very seriously, which means we're probably all just getting lists from Neal, who's like our teammate who is the best one at writing lists between all of us. So I probably will not be playing Tyranids, unfortunately. I do own AdMech, so it sounds like I will probably be playing some AdMech and might be having Tyranids on the shelf for a couple months. I will obviously pick them back up again as soon as they get a book drop or anything really. But I'm really curious how I do when I play a top meta list instead of giving myself the Tyranid handicap all the time. But for those of you who love playing Tyranids, do not give up on them. Obviously, I just went 5-1. They have a place in the current meta. You just need to know what your opponents are going to bring and tech towards that. So again, Kelermorph, especially with AdMech coming out, AdMech is super dependent on their character buffs. So definitely look at bringing in that Kelermorph. And Haywire is really good in the current meta. Almost everyone has vehicles right now. Well, again, thanks for watching. I will catch you all in the next video. I'm not really sure what the next video is going to be. As I said, Tyranids are going to be gone for a little while for me. But I look forward to talking to you all, and thanks again for watching.